Welcome to the Chess Channel, the channel where you can learn loads. Since last year, and since we knew the reigning world chess champion Magnus Carlsen abdicated, we would have a brand new chess champion, but until yesterday, we never really knew who it would be. With a relatively exciting championship match, that resulted to 14 beautiful games, both Nepo and Ding kept everyone glued to their seats until the very last moment. With an equal score after 14 games and having gone all the way through the final tiebreakers, it was Game 4 that decided the fate of this incredible championship of 2023. So now that we know this is our brand new world chess champion, let us look at how the tiebreaker game of round 4 went. Some say it was one of the best games of the championship and others say it was the best. In either situation, this was one heck of a game, with most chess enthusiasts having actually predicted Nepo would snatch this championship. It was not until the big dragon woke up in the last few moments and really kicked things into another gear. Using one of our traditional chessboards, with Nepo using the white pieces, we saw an e4 opening. Ding answers with the usual e5. And as soon as we witnessed the knight being developed, we pretty much knew what the likely continuation would be. Ding Liren in turn introduced his queenside knight. And as soon we saw the Spanish unfold, an opening that was repeated in multiple rounds earlier, was this going to go into specific lines, and if so, which ones? When the bishop came under fire, Nepo returned him to safety. Ding instantly develops knight number 2. And with Nepo here getting his king to safety, Ding goes for the closed system, or variation if you like. The closed Spanish is characterized by this bishop entry into e7. There are so many ways to play this line, but with both players being prepared for this very important game, it was not who was going to make less mistakes but the person who was going to capitalize and, more importantly, be in a position to take advantage of any situation. d3 led to another attack on the bishop, and with Nepo backing off nicely, this is how Ding Liren continues. It paves the way for the bishop on c8, but which way is he going to use to get this bishop activated? With a straight a4, Ding Liren gets in this bishop move, and out of nowhere, this is how Nepo chooses to continue. Some may say this is a loss of tempo because if bishop g4 was on the cards, Ding would have gone for it already. Anyhow, Ding castled here, and rather than the traditional knight d2 or bishop d2, Nepo attempts another variation. This is the move he executed. The basic idea of this move is to look at securing or occupying this outpost on d4, but normally this is achieved by pushing on with a subtle c3. With the bishop now positioned on e3, maybe the idea was to stop the access into d4, but Ding Liren tries another variation. He chased after this bishop on b3. Nepo instantly retains him in this way. And with the first pawn coming off, Nepo was in a way confident he would get some compensation from this position. He developed his knight into this outpost. Ding answered with this rook repositioning, and much is about to happen here. There is pawn now on b2 at stake, but this is part of the opening phase. b3 would be a disaster. To prevent catastrophe in the opening of this game, Nepo returned his bishop to the first. But should this pawn on b2 go? Some may choose to remove this pawn, but after this pawn also drops, this rook will now be in danger and needs to retreat. If you swap the knight to the bishop, the only way out would be to push on with this initiative. This push cuts out the bishop on e3 and additionally protects the knight on a4. Okay, this would be one basic variation or line to consider which might be in favor of white. Let us see what happened after the pawn came under fire. Ding Liren knew it was near impossible to try and hold on to this pawn on a4, and yet he tried to cover him. What he did was to reposition the queen, but as soon as this move materialized, Ding shot off with this pawn. Okay, it does cut out the bishop from e3, but it no longer saves the pawn on a4. With Nepo taking using the knight, the idea was to evacuate the knight from a4 and automatically create a discovered threat, a two-pronged attack actually, which is very hard to cover. In this light, Ding backed off the knight. Nepo does the same with his own knight, and with this pawn now on the queenside fully exposed, Ding was calculating whether it was best to cover or let him go. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways to cover here. In the end, Ding used 12 seconds to cover in this way. Nepo here repositions his knight to the second. And because he was aiming to further jump the knight into c4, Ding Liren spots this attempt and in less than 3/4 of a minute, tries this type of response. Nepo having assessed this position quite fast, he still jumped the knight in c4, but it was Ding who was not prepared to trade off just yet. He used the bishop on e6 to attack the knight in this way. The pawn on d5 was removed, and with Ding capturing in this way, Nepo was trying to determine the best way to play it. He eventually backed off the bishop, and with Ding taking the decision to trade, he also goes on to trade his relatively strong bishop to an equally strong knight. Given Ding had returned from the dead, he was now looking to hold his position and aim for a draw. He knows having the black pieces means nothing and each game is determined on its own merit. With a rather weak pawn on e5, Ding could push on with f6 to support him, but he could also go for any other move. There is this bishop move to d6, but in the end, this is how he decided to play it. This move has an added function. The bishop on d8 is in time to cover for this pawn on a5, is he not? Bishop d2 led to a subsequent bishop repositioning, and with this pawn finding now the third, there is quite an interesting position developing on the board. It looks pretty straightforward, but at this stage, any error, however small, could be fatal. We knew the aim to control the center is 85% of any game, but if we slightly redirect to any of the top chess engine championship events, our engines of today have made their own rules, constantly rewriting and forming and developing new theories. Engines no longer have the need to castle, they deliberately allow the opposition to land them with double pawns, and basically they principally aim to confuse anyone and anything. For sure, we shall be looking at the Top Chess Engine Championship of Season 23 that just ended, but first things first. In an effort to exert some control in the center, Ding opted for this blast, and Nepo finally stops here to catch his breath. He knew he had some time to kill and he could not be careless. He also knew he had Ding Liren cornered many times before and yet, he was not able to finish him off. Nearly 4 minutes down the line, this is the move he went for, and slowly the shift is moving away from the queen side and now is focusing right in the center of the chessboard. Rook d8 eventually resulted to this way forward. The team here had been looking hard to find the logic of this move and none of us have actually a clue. Maybe at some stage sooner than later, this rook on the 2nd of May want to move eastwards and join up with his twin brother on e2. Queen g6 resulted to Nepo to also move his own queen here. And now via this second queen repositioning, not only time was coming down fast, but both players are beginning to feel the pressure. This queen move into d6 has great potential because after this specific advancement into e4, there is certain checkmate lurking in the background in only 2 moves. With this in mind, Nepo took 0 chances. He pushed on with this pawn to eliminate the mate threat, and now via this rook move by Ding, things were beginning to heat up. If anyone wins this game, this person would automatically become the next brand new world chess champion. With this in mind, right after this rook move into d8, with the queen sitting on the same file as the opposing rook, Nepo repositioned his lady here, holding in a way hostage the queen on d6. If she leaves the knight exposed, this knight on c6 will disappear in an instant. Ding is now rookie to these tactics but still tried a risky way forward. He came up with a clever resource, but can you sass it out? He attacked the queen in this way to provoke a response. And when with this pawn being immediately captured, the idea was to jump the knight and attack the queen. As soon as this move unfolded, this queen has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different places to go. Queen e3 appears to be fine, but as we can see, queen f4 would be disastrous. If you reposition the queen on the rim, after this queen is challenged, should the queen leave the game and you take in this way to still stand a chance to fork on f3. King g2 stops this, but what it doesn't stop is this taking on c4. It would be a difficult position to assess, but we can still try and simplify. Bishop c1 is most likely to lead to this knight to drop back, but it is most likely white will have some edge. It would not be big, but an edge is an edge. If we return to the original game, Nepo chose to back off his queen to this outpost, and it was at this point in time when Ding Liren himself was calculating what was best to try. He wanted to shut this bishop on b1 out of any action, with him trying this knight jump into the third. Though rook e2 appears to be a viable option, Nepo hands over the bishop to gain the knight. Remember the rook that was on a1 and now on a2. This is the point where he is handy. If he was not on the second, this bishop on d2 would have needed to depart unless you find it right to place the rook on the a2. You can still try this avenue of play even with this position. Nepo right now is a full pawn up, but does he have enough to win this game? As soon as he got rid of this pawn, Ding trades in the rooks. And as soon as this pawn on the fourth also dropped, both players are back to square one. They have the exact same pieces, but is this position equal? In the meantime, there is a rook at threat, and furthermore, this pawn on f5 is under fire. Does f3 work here? Okay, it opens up the king side, but as far as this pawn on c5 is here, the black bishop would be unable to exert any real influence. Nepo took just under 90 seconds to play his follow-up move. He returned the rook to the very first. And with Ding Liren taking no prisoners, he looked at this position as carefully as he could and in the end got rid of this pawn. Bishop d2 tying everything nicely together, resulted to this opening on the king side, and only now Ding Liren was beginning to feel he had things a bit under control. He knew, just like Nepo did, that with the queens on the board and with the presence of a rook and bishop each, this game had plenty of tricks and traps in it. Nepo wanted to find a way forward, and after trying this queen attack on the bishop, would this queen retreat look passive? It does not, and yet this new attack is not likely to work. Why not? Is because of this bishop repositioning, and the game is not bound to go anywhere. For this very reason, we guess the idea was to play correctly and simply not blunder. Does a move like this bishop retreat work? It does not, but can you see why? Pinning the bishop in this way is not the right way forward. What you instead need to do is to find a far more effective way to get through, but what move are we looking for? It's here. Just take here, and I hope everything new makes sense. Should this bishop fall, once you get this nifty check going, the rook also goes, and there is no way Ding would be able to catch up. These tactics are absolutely ideal for these types of games, but would you have been able to spot any of them given the time span of this game? Coming back to this tie-breaker game of round 4, this was the move Ding sought best to play. If you instead go for something like this, should this pawn drop and he has to, the idea is to hit this pawn off too. It's not an easy one to find in a blitz or rapid, but if you found this move, if you get this bishop out of his misery, what you automatically are looking for is a checkmate in just 2 moves. After this check materializes, king h2 leads to this. And right after the queen tries to intercept, this is what you are looking to achieve, and it would be game over. By the way, you can also take the other way around, and again this would be another checkmate. Coming back, even if this pawn is eventually removed with the idea we just saw, this game need not end in this way. What does this timely check do, and how far can you take it? Though after the king finds the 7th, you may think Ding would find a way out. Do not get obstructed by what you see. There is one way out, but can you spot it? This is what you are looking for. Just get in with this check. And once the rook is removed, this is what you need. If you do this wrong, you will get punished. If you jump the king to the 7th, you would have blown it. Take with a check, and when the king finds the back rank, this bishop on g3 can also be removed. And this is how you win the game. Returning to the game once again, with Ding Liren covering in this way, Nepo repositioned the rook to this outpost and is now without a shadow of a doubt looking to squeeze in a check from the back rank. King h7 to revert this disaster, and again what you see from this point on is a true classic. Nepo spent just about 2 minutes and 45 seconds to try and find a way through. He knew he was close, but it is not finished until it is. He came up with this little trick to entice Ding to get rid of this pawn. If you take, there is this check, and if you no push ahead with this pawn, this rook on the first is now exposed. Rook b1, and again there are many variations you can consider. Some are way better than others, but just to illustrate, would this bishop move be sufficient? It can easily backfire. If you attack the queen, queen b2, and now this takes on c5, and Ding would appear to be in trouble. Bishop c7 would be an absolute disaster, but can you see why? There are two excellent options to consider. One is this queen repositioning, and two, there is another something to consider right after we examine this line. Even if you squeeze this check in, bishop c1 to block everything, and something has to give. Both the bishop on c7 and the rook on g7 are absolutely lost, and there is no way out of this mess. The other move, which is way better than queen c4, would be this attack on the queen. For starters, this queen on b2 has no checks, but how strong would this queen move be? Can you afford to move the queen away from this rank, and if so, where can you take her? This is the move you are looking for. Whatever you choose to play, there is a checkmate lurking in the background. This incoming check for sure gets you nowhere, but let's see how far it can take you. King g2 runs into this check, and once the king finds this outpost, it would still be game over. If you take with a check, once this bishop drops, Ding would have no viable checks and the game is lost. The big problem is this queen on e8 and the potential checkmate on h8. With the bishop on d4 that is in control of the most important square, if we come back to this position, the best move would be to get rid of him. But after this rook is taken with a check, queen g7, takes, and takes with a check. And this game will end in no more than 10 moves max. Coming back to this game, we looked at the position on move 39 when Nepo tried this bishop move into e3 to entice the queen to have this pawn removed. Any ideas what Ding did here if you watched the game and if you remember? Given he was short on time, he still found the best resource. Any takers here? This was that move, and Ding Liren is adding the pressure on loose pawns. With a pawn at stake, Nepo was trying to work out another king of tactic. He came up with this sort of attack, but with the queen now on c4 numbed, if you take this pawn in this way, after you get faced with this pin, rook f6 coming out of danger, and this game looks equal. There is absolutely no need to go back anywhere because this is exactly what we witnessed in this game. With the rook on c1 holding a nice pin, Ding had to find the best move, and this is where he actually finds it. He came up with this very daring initiative, and the idea is that if you get rid of the bishop, this incoming check would settle the score quite nicely. Nepo too was right on the money here. He repositioned the queen to this outpost and is looking to use this position to sneak in a check, and hopes with this to result to a perpetual. Bishop b4 by Ding led to the check we suspected, and with the king backing off, Nepo continues with the checks. We can work out king f8 loses because after this rook finds the fourth, 5 would be another move that does very little. Challenge this pawn, and should you go for this queen move, after you take, and take, this takes here is all you would ever need. Getting the queen involved is not going to cut it only because of this incoming check. King g7, take, and right after this brand new check materializes, rest assured you are looking at a certain checkmate. King f7, another check, and right after the king finds the back rank, rook f4 is good and strong enough to seal victory. For those who are looking for a more effective response, there is this rook move instead. There is no need, however, to continue from this point onwards, but please do take some time to consider what other options might be available here. We have seen the what-ifs of what happens if Ding places his king on f8. To avoid all this from happening, Ding repeated his last move, and when Nepo repeated, Ding had made a very bold decision. Any ideas what he did? He went for a move very few would go for. He pinned his own rook in this way, and in fact paralyzes both the rook and king at the cost of having the queen stick to guarding the white diagonals from b1 and f5. Ding knew what he had to do from this point on, but it was Nepo's turn to move. He repositioned his queen here. There comes this pawn into c4, and how are you going to be able to stop those free passes? It was all or nothing from this stage on. That rook move to g6 was admirable, but could this attempt to allow the pin backfire? Nepo was about to take full advantage, and without any delay this is the move he initiated, and this one was just about to send shock waves all throughout the chessboard. With h5 on the cards, this game looked over, and yet Ding kept his cook and found once again the only move that mattered. He came in with this challenge. Nepo has no option but to reject the challenge by getting his queen to back off. Both Nepo and Ding are low on time, but given all other tiebreakers were drawn, was this the idea that this game was also going to be drawn? One key move that was missed by Ding was this easy bishop response, and even if Nepo would have responded in this way, there was nothing wrong with this advancement to c3. King g2 would do absolutely nothing here, because when the queen gets attacked, Queen g4 would have settled the score quite nicely. The question still remains: how is this being accomplished? Once you discover this check, King g1 can now be followed by this blow, and Nepo falls apart. Ding missed this so important bishop move to attack the rook, and chose instead to go after the queen. Queen g4 led to this pawn to advance to the third, and Nepo from this point was reliving a true nightmare. How on earth did he let this position arise, and how was he going to come out of it in one piece? He tried this subsequent attack on the queen, but in a span of just 10 seconds, and once Ding retreated the queen to create this type of challenge, Nepo knew there was no way to trade. Out of nowhere, and no one can really blame him, he came in with this queen move and was basically looking to create a real situation. If he only could squeeze in the rook to the back rank and then deliver the checkmate of the match. It was not B though. When Nepo's queen came under fire, Nepo still keeps her on the back rank, but having placed her here, Ding Liren now tries to liquidate in this way. With both rooks eventually departing, Ding used the queen to do the job, and with Nepo slipping in this check, he hoped for a perpetual. Ding Liren, however, without delay covered the check with the queen. Nepo repositions his queen here, and with Ding Liren now taking his turn to squeeze in this check, King h2 resulted to this pawn to find the fourth. It was a huge blunder, but it did not prove deadly, and we shall see why. Bishop d4 resulted to a consecutive Ding blunder, and you can feel the nerves all throughout. Ding advanced on the queen side and was near certain this pawn would make it to promotion. But with Nepo taking a no for answer, he denied this pawn on the queen side by choosing this avenue of play. With a mate in one lurking in the background, Ding had two ways of resolving it. One is via this bishop move, which secures Nepo a draw, and two is the move Ding executed. It was this timely queen retreat, which stopped everything. And here Ding went for it. He pushed this pawn to the brink of promotion. Nepo has no choice but to stop this pawn from promoting by via this bishop repositioning, but right after his renewed bishop attack, the game could not get more excited. King g2 and Nepo here was a sitting duck. As soon as Ding sealed the access to this outpost on h5 by occupying it, Nepo retreats his own king to the first. But via this bishop repositioning, one of these two passes was going to get there. One panicking moment was at this point in the game, and how Nepo buckles under pressure. He went for this move, and as soon as this pawn bit the dust, Nepo tries to squeeze water out of stone. He went for this attack on the queen, but move fell short. Firstly, and for those who love analyzing positions such as this one, why can't you promote to a brand new queen with a check? With this pawn being taken, you have this lovely pin. And because the queen is powerless to check, the game is instantly lost. Ding Liren did his magic in a different yet similar way. He repositioned his queen here, and as soon as Nepo created this pin, neither a2 nor c1. Ding advanced this passer on the king side, and Nepo knew he was on the last straw. He attempted this very poor move to create a situation, but Ding Liren was not going to budge. Any ideas what he did? He found the second. The queen had this pawn removed. and with Ding removing this pawn from f4, he also locks in a very comfortable checkmate. This checkmate is possible because of this pawn on c2 that is blocking the queen's access to the second. If you for example try this queen move, or even if you get rid of the bishop, you can do this in more than a single way. One is to take with a check, and when the king finds the second, once you bring up a brand new queen, the ending can be done in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways. Needless to say, Nepo had given up 2 moves earlier, and from his body language, he was completely demoralized. He had Ding Liren where he wanted, but in the end not only Ding bounced back, but this had to be Ding's best performance to date. It is unbelievable how Ding Liren was able to bounce back, and even he himself could hardly believe he made it in the end to become the first ever Chinese world chess champion. And maybe ironic to say, the women's final is also going to be contested by another 2 Chinese, so it's a double whammy for China. This is the first time ever that China has Ding Liren as the new world chess champion, and in a month's time, we would know who is going to become the women's world champion. Of course, it is sad the Oxford graduate Hu Yivan is no longer competing, but we can only respect her decision not to compete. And this was the tie-breaker game of round 4, one that led to a very dramatic ending and one that had resulted to a number of very costly blunders. As promised, we are preparing a very interesting encounter between the 2 finalist chess engines that competed in the recent Top Chess Engine Superfinal, a superfinal that is way too complex than any human encounter. And this was it for today. God bless, and we hope you enjoyed this extensive analytical video.